and told me how comforting the 911 operator was. She stayed on the line with this lady until two of your officers arrived. The two officers stayed for about 10 or 15 minutes to make sure that everything was okay and the husband who had fallen was okay. And she said, you just don't understand how comforting it is when you have someone like our officers at CPD who are taking the time. She said it was 10 minutes of their time, but she'll never forget it, she said. And luckily, that's not an unusual occurrence. Our officers do a tremendous job in calming situations, as Councilor Henderson said, making sure that things are taken care of. And I just want to add my appreciation to you and to your staff and to those officers that are out there that are doing that work. Sometimes I know if you're on the line and you're the one in the car or you're the one on the motorcycle, you don't always hear how much your service is appreciated. But I think from the conversations that we've had today, I hope that they know that they are appreciated and what they do does make a difference in our community. We appreciate it. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Chief, for always being so responsive when I call.
Yes, ma'am.
And when my constituents want you to come out, you all come out.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that we might be able to do to get the information out as to what the police department is doing, have a quarterly program on CCG channel, once a quarter. And Major Wright can come and talk about Dare and Great, because the students know what we're doing, but the parents may not know. Or the neighborhoods may not know what's going on. And that way you can tell your story, because it's a good story to be told.
We'll be glad to do that. We'll
Thank you.
participate in that. Yes,
Chief,
ma'am.
I do have one question. When we're looking at the statistics, and I'm not trying, we've heard at some of the events that the mayor has hosted, the Let's Talk, that do these statistics include juvenile crimes?
They do not.
They do not.
Not unless they're involved in a murder and they've been adjudicated as an adult. But if there's a murder, it's there. And let's put it this way. If there's a break-in of a house, yes, they're included in there. If it's some of the other juvenile offenses that we run into on a daily basis, they would not be a Part 1 crime. They would not be there. If a juvenile commits an auto theft or a robbery or a burglary or a murder, they're on there.
So home invasions are included in that, even if a juvenile is involved.
Correct.
And the reason I ask is because, you know, that is more of a demand on your folks, because a lot of those things are still going on, and I know it adds to the number of calls that may or may not be reported. So
and we're looking at a time too when school's about to be out again, and we're already planning for those, especially in some of the neighborhoods, children that are not basically don't have anything else to do during the day except wander through neighborhoods.
Right.
We're already preparing for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes.
And as part of the police department presentation today, we wanted to go through the police pay reform, and the HR director has passed out a handout, and we'll just kind of walk through that with you and answer any questions. And it is included in the recommended budget.
Is this in the budget already?
Yes, it's already in the budget.
I read it, it's good.
Good morning, Council.
Good morning.
I just have a handout that is in your budget. It's titled Police Officer Recruitment for the FY17 budget. This is a proposal that was stated that's included in the budget to increase police officer entry-level pay. The proposal is to move entry-level police officers that are at grade 14 to step C and step D for those with a degree. This proposal unfunds 16 positions, and the justification is to recruit highly qualified police officers. In summary, all current police officers that are at Step A or B would be moved to Step C. The police officers with a degree would be moved to Step D. All new police officers would be hired at Step C, and those with degrees would be moved to Step D. At the time of this report, the police department had 268 budgeted police officer positions. There are 110 police officers that are at Step A and 94 that are at Step B. 10 of those police officers are already above Step C due to longevity. And there, at the time, again, of this report, there were 54 vacant police officers' positions, and we're aware that that number is higher now. There are 204 police officers at grade 14, Step A or B. To move these officers to Step C, it would cost $387,990. Police officers with a degree would move to Step D, and this would cost an additional $121,820. Regarding the 54 vacant positions, to move these police officers to Step C, it would cost $135,617. The total overall cost would be $645,428. If the 16 police officer positions we mentioned were unfunded, there would be a savings of $649,919. This would leave 38 vacant positions funded. The overall cost for the FY17 budget would then be $605,245,000. The savings from the unfunded police officer positions would pay for the FY17 officer recruitment proposal. We did look at how this would impact sergeants in the department. We considered whether these changes would have a negative impact. After a review, it was determined that this proposal would not negatively impact sergeants or the supervisors. This means that the current and new police officers who are placed at Step C or D of pay grade 14 will not exceed the lowest paid sergeant in the department. It should also be noted that administration recognizes that there are pre-existing pay compression issues, and these are not addressed in this particular proposal. Just a snapshot at the bottom of the handout that I provided you. If this proposal is accepted regarding new police officers, a police officer with no degree would start at a pay grade of $40,600. A police officer with an associate's degree would start at $41,488. A police officer with a bachelor's degree would start at $42,736, and a police officer with a master's degree would start at $43,985. As is done in many other law enforcement agencies throughout the nations, other incentives that help in the recruitment of police officers are the additions of incentive pays for those with military experience and those officers who already have their post-certification. So this is an added incentive for recruitment as it relates to police officers with military experience. The department, on average, hires annually about 50 officers. Of those 50 officers, about 12.5 of those officers will have some military experience. If we provide an incentive for them, that would have an annual cost of $15,000. Regarding those officers who have post-certification, again, the department hires an average of about 50 officers annually, and about 12.5 of those officers will have post-certification. This would be an incentive that would be spread over a 3-year period of $2,400 per officer, and that would be $800 spread over that 3-year period. and that would cost $30,000. So those are additional recruitment incentives that have a minimum cost to those. The last proposal has to do with the FY16, the current budget for police officer retention. And it's proposed to provide a one-time bonus to all sworn officers that are on payroll as of January 1, 2016. This would be a disbursement of salary savings of $523,000. Each sworn officer would receive a one-time bonus of $1,200. Now, I'm advised by the Finance Department in regards to the salary savings that $1,200 could now be $1,500 if council so approves it. There were 429 sworn officers on payroll as of January 1, 2016, and this would cost $514,800. And this payout would take place prior to June 30th, 2016. So that's the proposal, and I'm available to answer any questions. And I know the
Councilor
Deputy City
Thomas?
Manager.
I think that we are being a little disingenuous here. I am in favor of what's on this piece of paper. However, I want to make sure that I have my facts correct. The sign-on bonus of $2,000, as I recall, is paid in 2 installments. It's paid at the end of the first year and at the end of the second year. Is that correct? Half at the end of the first year, half at the end of the second year?
It's actually paid in 4 installments of
4 installments.
$500, and you are correct. So the officer will not receive the full benefit of the sign-on bonus in their first year. It's going to be spread out over 2 years.
And once that $2,000 has been paid, it is not reoccurring.
That's correct.
So that what is reoccurring, if you look at the chart that you gave us for the officer without a degree, the base pay of $35,480 and the bonus from the OLOST of $3,121, that's what is ongoing.
That's
The
correct.
$2,000 is not. So the salary, the ongoing salary of that person is not $40,000. The ongoing salary of that person is $38 plus. Is that correct?
That is correct. Keep in mind also, Councilor Thomas, Council did approve in the FY16 budget the pay reform for longevity. So this $2,000 is going to be spread over a 2-year period of that new officer. And on the 3rd year, they'll be eligible for pay reform, which starts out at $1,000 and then $1,300 and $1,500. So they do get a catch-up there.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're saying it correctly. I don't want some officer to say to me, you said I'm going to have a salary of $40,000, and I don't have a salary of $40,000. It's, whatever it is. As I said, I am fully supportive of this process and the way we're doing this, but I just want us to make sure that our terminology is the same because we often have questions asked of us by citizens about, how does this work? Thank you.
Councilor Woodson?
Thank you very much. I also wanted to know, we always talk about the salary and the base salary that we're offering the officers to come, the new hires. Are we also telling them about the other benefit package, like the car they get, that they're able to use their equipment, their weapons? Because I know when we were looking and comparing with other communities, some officers have to have their own weapon, or they paid their own Social Security. They did other benefits. Knowing the dollar amount is great, but do you know there's more to that packet that's not in dollars it's beneficial to you compared to other communities?
We spend a lot of time going through that with officers, and I have the captain in our HR bureau here today, Jim Pope, and we spend a lot of time going through that with people. One of the current people that we lost to a very small town just north of us, a town, not a county, but a town. And his reasoning behind leaving was not that he made more money, it was that he didn't have to pay as much in benefits. So therefore, with the amount of money that he made, even though it was less than, by the money that he saved by not having to pay the benefits, it now brought him back up to about what he takes home today. We're constantly having to address these things within the department, and that's a plus when we have our own HR area within the police department, is the fact that we can address these things as they're occurring. Rether has had to get involved in a lot of that stuff with us and talking to some of the people. And that's a reason that we have the exit interviews. And hopefully when they spell it out for us, we can either talk to them or we can hopefully change it to where it won't occur again. But there's not a lot we can do about salary and benefits and them coming in and saying, well, I don't want to work this shift or that shift because I really need to be somewhere else, or I need to work another job during that time. We just have to put it in a rotation basis, and there's not a lot we can do with things like that. They can't come in today and be in my chair tomorrow. We deal with that a lot with the millennials, a lot. In the recruitment of the new folks, your average millennial will have 4 jobs in 2 years. And once they get with us, we hope that the anchor comes out for a little while anyway. And through some of the monies being spread out over a 3-year period of time, and then on some of the others being spread out over a 2-year period of time, we hope to have them for at least that period of time before they start looking at something else. Now, with the pay bonus that we're requesting this year, the one-time bonus out of salary savings, you know, that is a very plus, very positive for the officers that have stuck it out with us and has had to ride maybe a beat and a half or 2 beats because somebody that's riding a beat right beside him, you know, we may not have the individual. So, and for the extra work, the hard work that they've done and the dedication to the department and the city that they've done, and that's the reason for the one-time bonus with that.
Oh, I don't have a problem with any of it. I mean, I read it last night, and I was like, okay, not a problem. I understood it.
We're constantly trying to stay ahead of the wave, constantly.
I was just trying to see, to have a better understanding, you know, during the conversation with the individual, when you talk about the salary, do they know, hey, you know, compared to other communities, we provide you with a vehicle, we provide you with this and this, compared to another community where you would have to have this equipment on your own or you couldn't use it. That's what I was trying to find out, if we added some of those pluses during our conversation. I have no problem with what's being presented.
The small towns that, believe it or not, every 5 years, we rotate a vest, depending on when that vest was purchased. The expiration date on that vest is 5 years. There's actually towns, small towns within the state of Georgia that cannot afford to buy vests. Well, in all honesty, there's nothing wrong with the vest other than the fact that the warranty is now expired and the manufacturer won't back it in case an officer is injured. So we will take and give those vests with approval from council or approval from the finance office. We will give that to the individual departments that can afford it and try to assist them as much as we can. And we have individuals that come with us, and I think we've seen it lately in a county just east of us, that's wanting a couple of old cars, things that we have scrapped out and turned in. Same thing with an ambulance, same thing with a fire truck. They just can't afford it.
I saw something like that, a request made, I think it was from the fire department. I think it was, I saw that was making a request of equipment that we had.
And
Sure.
to add on to Councilor Woodson, and the chief and I talk about this a lot, we really have great benefits. Our pension,
Oh, yeah.
we have a defined pension plan. Few communities still have that. They've shed it over the years because it's so expensive. And some employees, given their age or their place in life, that's not as valuable to them. As they start having children and families and maybe getting some years, they start realizing how beneficial it is to know for a fact that when you reach a certain age, you're going to receive a check for a specific amount for the rest of your life. But when they're 26 or 27, they may prefer to have that cash value. So we've actually seen, in some instances, police officers going to communities with lesser benefits because their paycheck is a little more because they're not paying for a defined benefit plan. They're not paying for an insurance plan or a health care plan that covers what ours does. And I think we all have, as we've talked about health care in this, we all have talked about instances where spouses who are otherwise very gainfully employed with large corporations or other business entities still come to join our health care plan because our benefit is so much better than it is at these other companies. My spouse, for instance, I know Lucy Sheftel's spouse, and many, many others have choose to be on this plan because it's just frankly better than others. So that has a cost. Some of our employees demand that. It wouldn't work here if we didn't have those great benefits. Others of our employees would prefer to have the cash value of those benefits.
And I think it's the other counties, the other cities that are not explaining it well enough. I don't know that it's us. I think that when they see pie-in-the-sky proposal placed in front of him in a single dollar amount, then that's not necessarily the full explanation of what the money is or what his benefits are later.
And just one, hold on, Councilor Davis.
Go ahead, Councilor Henderson.
No, that's all right, go ahead.
Well, I want to segue to another aspect of this conversation we're having. We're talking about solving a challenge in the police department. The chief spoke earlier about the many challenges, and there are several challenges that are out there. I think the recruiting aspect is one, and we're trying to make a difference there in the limited resources that we have. But I only view this as part of the solution. Maybe you can say it might be somewhat a majority of the solution from a percentage standpoint, but I think there's other aspects here that we got to look at as well. And Mary, being the head of public safety and Director Hollowell, along with working with the administration of the CPD, I think it's imperative that we start looking at better policies or potential policies. Now, in respect to the labor laws, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what can and can't be done. But I do know we're spending a lot of money. The city of Columbus has spent a lot of money. We train and we train. We have some of the best training. We're known for having the best training around. And we invest a lot in training. And it pays off. It pays off in the professional standards of the department, the integrity and the character of the department. But a lot of times that investment decides to go elsewhere, like we're talking about. And many times within our own government, other agencies of our own government. So from a policy standpoint, you know, I would like to see the administration start looking at some ways that we can retain these officers longer if we invest in them, that they will stay with the CPD, or set up our policies that requires officers, if they make that decision, to stay with us for a while or to stay with the CPD for a while. I think we need to have that conversation, because that's the other part of it. You can keep throwing money at it left and right, but in reality, you know, you've got a very competitive market out there with headhunters that are taking them as fast as CPD can train them.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the world I came from, you know, that was the aspect of multi-year contracts. I don't know, you know, that's a whole different level we're talking about, and I'm probably not able to do that here from that standpoint.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the concept of being able to retain those valuable officers to provide the services that are needed in our community.
Yeah, a couple of really good points, and then, of course, the chief can speak from his perspective. One, the chief and I have talked about the fact, and we'll continue to look into the fact, that in some communities, they do not allow intergovernmental transfers in the same free way that we do. There's a penalty imposed or some sort of recoupment. So we can look at that and see if it's productive or counterproductive, and we certainly will, because there are other communities that just don't allow that, to go to another office within the city after they've been trained by one person's budget or whatever. So we'll take a look at that and see if that's effective. Now, the other aspect is going to other communities, and there's a couple of things going on there, again, from the mayor's perspective. One, other communities do allow lateral transfers. So they'll take you in as a sergeant, or they'll promote you to a sergeant because you have this Columbus CPD training and you're a very valuable commodity. We don't do that. You have to start back at square one. So if somebody came into this community and had been a lieutenant somewhere else or captain somewhere else, they could certainly not be a lieutenant or captain at CPD. They'd have to start over as a patrol officer. And of course, that means we don't get the benefit of other people's training. But one thing we have done, I think, that we'll begin to address that at the chief's discretion of where they might be placed in the system, is that now we are going to give them a bonus for being post-certified. So they're going to have either come in as a newbie, if you will, and paid for that post-certified training themselves, or they will have been post-certified because they're associated with another law enforcement agency, and then the chief and his command staff can make the decision as to where that person is going to be ranked. So perhaps that will clear it up. And then the last comment I'll say is that I think the fact of the matter is that in these urbanized communities, when you're a Columbus police officer, you are a real intensively trained police officer. It is a full throttle community. You may go to a domestic dispute, you may go to a drug transaction aftermath. It could be anything, and not all police, communities deal with that. And so they know that when they're picking off our police officers and a few other communities that are highly urbanized, where they're highly trained, that they're getting the cream of the crop. And it's just, they're very high valued assets. So we're not the only ones struggling with that. Other urbanized communities are struggling. Georgia does allow you to recoup, to claw back that, $2,500 car. They've monetized the cost if another Georgia police jurisdiction takes your officer after you've trained them. But if they're a 3 or 4 or 5 year officer, you don't get it back. So Chief, what comments do you have?
There's a 2-year limitation on that. If we hire someone and train them, get them through mandate, and they leave this department within a 2-year period, we can recoup our training cost from the other agency that accepts that officer.
Oh, that's great.
And that's law. That's Georgia law. And to follow up a little bit on what the mayor said about bringing people in with rank, we're under ordinance with the Columbus Police Department. CALEA oversees that, as well as Georgia certification plus city ordinance as to what we can and can't do. I would not want to hire a lieutenant that had been in a small town in Georgia that had absolutely nothing to do on a daily basis except show up at an office and then bring him into the Columbus Police Department as a lieutenant. That would not be fair to my people. It would not be fair to him, because I'd have brand new officers that have been here 2 years that could run rings around what he could do. And I have problems with that.
And Chief, I appreciate you highlighting that. And let me just say, like I said earlier, I think this needs to be a communication with the administration and our Director of Public Safety, which is our mayor, and others, and trying to understand this a little bit more, and certainly taking that into consideration. And for this conversation today, from this perspective, I was more focusing on patrol officers coming in. There were some other points. The mayor brought up some points. You've made some points as well of things that could be addressed, but it might be a little more complicated and a challenge. But as respect to initially, and I'm not really talking about trained officers coming in. That's a whole different game. But initially, the officers that we need, that we're recruiting and we're training, and we're trying to get them to stay. And there might even be in the brokerage world, they tend to pay bonuses sometimes from a standpoint of a loan if you stay. And I don't know if that's an aspect that can be done from a labor law standpoint in government, in respect to government. But anyway, whatever. These are just things that are just kind of going through my mind. But I do know the premise of what I'm trying to say here is that you can throw money to try to come up, throw money at something, to try to come up with a solution to a challenge, but that's not the whole equation. There's another part of it as well, and so it needs to be blended. So we do need to have that conversation. I would hope from a council standpoint that sometime in the near future that you could come back and maybe address that with us as what
Well,
else can be done.
Sure, and we do talk about it all the time, and when we do find some idea where we think this would be fruitful and productive, then of course bring it to you. To bring to your point about the bonus for longevity, as you were saying, sometimes brokers, if they've been somewhere for so long, then they can get a certain bonus. Well, we did that as we can do it within our construct last year. So if you've been with us for 7 years or 10 years, you will get an additional bonus, and they are cumulative. So as Councilor Thomas asked a question about the signing bonus expiring, that's true, but then if you stay that third year, you get I think it's a $1,200 or $1,300 bonus, and then if you stay with us till 5 years, you get another $1,500 on top of the $1,300. If you stay with us 7 years, you get another $1,500 on top of the 15, on top of the 13. So it's only been in place 1 year, but eventually, because it's regimented, the officers will be able to see, by the time I've been here X years, my salary will be at least this much, and that doesn't include COLAs or other raises. Now, one thing, if we get more funds in the future and our revenue situation loosens up a bit, we can always enhance those milestones. So instead of 1,300, 1,500, instead of 1,500, 1,700. Make it more meaningful in that regard. But we have addressed the bonus, and we continue to, and we'll certainly bring the ideas back.
You're right, Mayor. We have taken steps as far as retention, but what I was really focusing on was the aspect of if you invest, that you're able to retain that if they do not stay. I know there's clawbacks and all, but the standpoint of increasing the bonuses potentially from a loan, maybe a loan aspect that you could take back if they don't meet a maturity date as far as staying with the department. So that's what I was kind of addressing.
Thank you. And, I think Councilor Davis is exactly right. You can't get in a continuous high-stakes poker game where I'll see you and I'll raise you, I'll bump you a nickel, I'll bump you a nickel. I mean, and there's got to be things that we can do as a government that, maybe we take a page out of some of these larger businesses and do a focus group and invite folks that are at different stages of their career, and let's just talk about it. Just see what are some things that we can do that non-monetarily, that are non-monetary in nature that we can try to do to enhance that retention. I know you guys work on that 24/7. I did want to make one point just for folks watching. When we talk about unfunding 16 positions, this is not a personnel cut as much as it is just an embracing of reality. Because even when we've been at peak hire times, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I don't know that we've ever been less than about 10 to 15 to 20 open positions. So this is really just recognizing that those typically go unfilled anyway. And it's just authorized. I think the mayor's been creative in authorizing the chief to use those funds to enhance some of the recruitment opportunities. Okay. Any other questions for the chief?
I want to take a second and thank you for listening to this. Thank you for your continued support of the department. Thank you for this one-time bonus to the officers. I think that'll send a very positive message that if you stick it out with us long enough, we'll take care of you. And I think that'll do that. I think it's here. There's been a lot of time spent with the mayor and the city manager and the finance director, now the assistant city manager, in reference to putting a plan like this together just to take care of our officers. And from the top, I want you to know that I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
And if you do want to, the only thing in the budget is the $1,200 bonus for 2016. And the finance deputy city manager is now telling us that apparently there's additional salary savings over and above what I knew about when I proposed the budget. And so if you wanted to increase it to $1,500 bonus, that would have to be on the ad list. So do you want to speak to that?
And because this is part of the FY16 budget and will be paid out, that will come back as a separate resolution approval to council in the month of June and be paid out in June. And at this time, the proposal is $1,200 unless council wanted to request to increase it to 1,500.
And it would have to go on the ad hoc?
It
Mayor
will-
Pro Tem asked to go ahead and put it on the ad list, and so we can
The money's
consider
already
it.
there.
Okay.
But
Well-
it has to be put on the ad hoc.
Since it's 2016.
Right, it's 2016, so what we'll do is bring a resolution to council either at the May 24th or the June 7th meeting, getting requests for approval, and if council wants to increase it to 1,500 at that time, then we can amend that resolution.
Wait, before we put it on the ad.
Well, there's no
and
ad
if there's
list.
consensus,
It'd
we
be
can-
FY16, you just bring the resolution. I think the Mayor Pro Tem just wants you to bring that.
Sure.
I was going to say, if there's consensus here, we might as well bring what you want and not have to amend it at the table if there was consensus.
It seems like there is.
Okay,
Well, that consensus word's gotten us bitten a few times lately. Why don't you just bring the resolution?
okay, we'll do that. And next on the agenda is the Elections Director, Nancy Bourne.
And while we're waiting, I know last week we did this, but I know we've got two candidates for District 8 seat, and I think it'd be wise to make these presentations available to both of them. One of them will be sitting here within a week of the election, and we'll still be doing the final voting on the budget. So if we could, let's just make sure that Mr. Garrett and Mr. Davis both have access to these presentations.
Do you have an extra? I don't need it, I guess. I have an extra if you need it. Okay. We ready?
Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here to tell you about the FY17 budget information. The recommended FY17 budget does not include funding for a state or local runoff in the event that that is necessary. If necessary, that runoff will be held on December the 6th, and the requirement for that state or local runoff will not be known until after the November 8th general election is certified. There's another little quirk in the law that requires us to have a federal runoff if there is a federal candidate that requires a runoff, and that election date will be January the 10th. Funding is not included in the FY17 recommended budget for the federal runoff also. We also will not know the status of that until after the November 8th general election results are certified. So again, we have a state or local runoff possibility on December the 6th, and because of a law, it was a federal court law that ruled that we have 45 days between a general election and a federal runoff. That federal runoff is January the 10th. That would require additional funding for two runoffs if both runoffs are necessary. The state runoff is going to cost approximately $70,000, and again, that is the state and local runoff. If we end up with numerous candidates for local offices, again, that will be on December 6th. If we have a federal runoff, the funding for that request will be $80,000 for a total of $150,000 if both runoffs are necessary. We won't know until November 8th whether or not those runoffs will be necessary or not. We'll know more information after the ballot is compiled and after we have all of the information for the November 8th general election ballot. So I'll have a better feel of it at that point after we determine the number of independent write-in or other kinds of candidates that we have that will appear on the November 8th general election ballot. Just wanted to make council and the budget committee aware of the possibility of both of those runoffs, and if you have any questions, I'm available.
Yes, ma'am. Councilor Thomas.
Ms. Board, do you have any sense of what might be a runoff on the federal what race might be in a runoff on the federal level?
The congressional seat, it would be one seat, and that would be your federal runoff. So congressional districts 2 or 3, either one of those, if they need a runoff, if you have a strong third-party candidate who pulls away enough votes so that one candidate does not get that 50% plus one requirement, the majority requirement, then we will need a runoff, and that would be January the 10th.
Have we had runoffs on the federal level recently, or is that an unusual event, or?
This is a fairly new law that was put in place after the state of Georgia was sued because we do not have 45 days for the military to return their ballot between an election or a primary and the runoff subsequent to that primary or general election. So it was the state of Georgia is under a ruling that we have to provide 45 days between a primary and the runoff or a general election and the runoff. So this is about our second election cycle where we've had that federal court ruling in place. And so we don't have a lot of historical data to go back on.
Mr. Budget Chair, I'm not sure, are you asking us to increase your budget by the 150, or just to be aware that that might be something that after November the 8th, you'll come back to us and say, I need some more money?
Yes, I am not asking you to increase the budget by $150,000 at this point, but I did want to make council aware that that could be a possibility at some point in time after the November 8th general election.
Okay, thank you.
Duly noted. Councilor Woodson.
Yes, Angelica, based on this information, I don't know, hi Nancy, and sorry that you had to wait so long.
That's okay.
Angelica, based on the information we're getting today, has it been brought to your attention you're prepared to have some $150,000 available if we should need it? Or is that something that being advised today we would start looking for? Because at first I thought that Nancy wanted it to be put on her budget, but she's saying no. So my thought now is, do we have a plan B in case she should need this funding, that it be available?
That's definitely something that we would have to take a look at as we get within the FY17 budget year. We'll certainly project any revenues that are coming in at that time and any expenditures, and see if there are some adjustments that we could make at that particular moment in time. But I don't have a plan as it stands right now.
Okay. Well, at least we've been notified now, so we have several months to try to come up with some miracle money.
Right.
In case it's needed. Hopefully it will not be, but if not, it's wonderful to have Plan B ready. Even if you find the money, we put it aside and it comes to where we don't need to use it, it could always go back to the area where we took it from. I just would feel comfortable knowing that we did have a Plan B, knowing that it's a possibility that we'll have to come up with $150,000.
And another thing that we'll take a look at is how we finish up with FY16.
Okay.
So,
Because there may be some funding
there may
from
be some
there
funding
that could
available.
be.
That's
Okay,
correct.
wonderful. Well, I'm glad that, Nancy, you came and let us know so we're prepared for it. And it won't be a surprise or a shocker if we had to come up with $150,000.
And Councilor Woodson, we can also look at the information, the ballot information, once we have it in August, and have a little bit of a better feel. Those races that have 3 candidates or more, certainly those are the only races in which you can have a runoff.
Correct.
And we can determine better if it would be a state or local runoff or a federal runoff at that point. And so we'll have a little more advance notice if we look at it in August.
Okay, well, thank you to you and your staff for all you do. I know you don't get many thank yous very often, and Ms. Janet, I see you back there. Thank you for all you do for us. We appreciate it, not only as elected officials, but as citizens of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilor Huff.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry, I've been working all morning. I've been live streaming, listening to all of it. Only question I had was, if we ever in need of emergency special elections? Are there funds for that? Yeah, this is for runoffs. It didn't say. This is for everything?
There is no funding for an emergency special election.
Okay.
That would be additional. And again, that would be by court order of a Superior Court judge.
Okay.
So, yes.
So,
Or a
based on
vacancy
what I was
created.
listening to coming in, it's just based on you have a budget, and then you move forward with, if there's a runoff unexpectedly, you have to fund for that, and then find monies for that anyway. And then, I'm just talking about emergency, it rarely happens, but if it comes up, then that has to go through Superior Court.
A regular runoff does not have to go through a Superior Court judge, but a special election that a
Special
Superior
election.
Court judge calls for does go through a Superior Court judge.
Okay.
And the way we calculate whether we budget for a runoff is we look at historical occurrences. We always know that there's a summer runoff, so we always budget for the summer runoff. We've not had the December runoff in many years, and we've never had the January runoff since that law has been in place. So that's why budgeting or funding was not requested for those two runoffs in December and in January.
Okay. And our average is still, what, 80 to 100,000 for a runoff?
Yes.
Okay.
Runoffs are a little less expensive because it's based on the number of precincts that you have to open. The staffing is a lot less, and then the turnout is a lot less.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Watch step.
And that concludes the budget review session for today. The May 24th would be the last budget review session, and that council meeting has been rescheduled for 9 a.m., so the budget review session will start immediately following council. On the agenda for next Tuesday includes the marshal, clerk of municipal court, public works, the sheriff, and the civic center, and the add-delete list. And we have passed that out to you, and we only had the one item today that really deals with FY16 budget, so we'll
Ms. Hodge, let
bring
me
that
just
back.
ask you a question. I know we've put a lot of folks on that 24th, which is fine. It's just that the challenge is if there are any adds or deletes that they want to make, some of them may need a couple of days to go through the line items and see what they want to suggest or recommend. How would it impact our timeline for the advertisement and the public hearings on the Taxpayer Bill of Rights if we had an emergency meeting on the 31st?
The requirement, the way the schedule is set now, is the ads would be in the newspaper on the 31st for the June 7th meeting. Now, on the June 7th meeting is the first reading of the budget ordinance, so it's open to any adjustments during first reading. So there would still be time for council to make any changes during first reading to the budget ordinance.
So the ads that go out don't have to, okay. I'm just asking because we may be in a situation where there are members of the committee that are not comfortable.
Well, I wonder,
finalizing.
too, if, we will have council that morning, and I don't know what that agenda looks like, but,
We've got a work session scheduled, right, on the 31st?
no, I'm talking about on the 24th.
Oh, okay.
Because it is, because, of course, Pat was going to come and her today, and her, it probably will be lengthy, but I was just going to offer if perhaps we could start a little earlier if our agenda is not too terribly full on the 24th. If we start at 9 and finish up like we did last time, at 11:30, we could get a couple
And I think that's
hours.
fine. I think my comments were more in line with the fact that we have challenged the Budget Committee, if they do make any kind of changes, to try to have looked through the line item to see if they could find something else. And many times, when they hear something from a department head, they may think of something they want to add or delete. I'm just trying to figure out, I think we need to have another opportunity, whether we need it or not, at least held back after the 24th, just in case. I don't know that it will occur, but I don't want to end up finding out we need another meeting
Can we cancel
to
the
vote the
work
budget.
session and make that?
Well, I think I think the advertisement has to be placed ahead of then, and it
The
will
ad is-
appear on the 31st.
Right. The ad is scheduled to be in the newspaper for the Taxpayer Bill of Rights and for the budget ordinance, would be in the paper on May 31st. It must be 7 days in advance of the meeting, which will be held on June 7th. But again, there are still opportunities to make changes on
Yeah,
June
so
7th. If you
bottom-
made changes on the 31st, we would make those changes at the meeting on June 7th.
Okay, and I knew the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, and that's really just outlining the value of the mill so that people understand that there may be some increase in their taxes, even though there was no increase in the millage.
That's correct.
But I had forgotten that the budget ordinance had to be published then as well. But we can still deal with that, and we can make any modifications, particularly if it's a wash, if they did identify something. So,
That's correct.
okay. All right. Any further questions? Councilor Davis?
Yeah, Deputy City Manager Hodge, when can I expect some of those, the documents and information that was asked for at some of the prior budget meetings?
We did pass out the responses at the last meeting. The one request that you made, requesting a 5-year plan, we're working on that, and as soon as we can get that completed, we'll provide that to
Well, then, I
council.
know I gave you a number of requests, but I don't think, I'll go back and look, but I don't think that I've received the information in that, the question answer list you're talking about.
Okay, we'll be happy to respond to those if there's something that's not on that list, but I
I
believe
know
we
I
passed
saw
that
people
out.
take, there were notes being taken, so I hope that I can get that information for some of these key dates. That's what I'm trying to say, is we got some key dates coming up. I'd like to take a look and have time to analyze some of that.
The only outstanding request that we have from that meeting was the 5-year strategic plan that you had requested, and also the length of time property liens are kept, and that was given a 6-month time period to come back with an update. So if there's additional information that we haven't provided, I'll get with you, and we'll definitely provide that.
At the end of this meeting, can you give me another copy of that list that you're
Absolutely.
looking at there? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Did you have, I think Councilor Allen, he's out of town, and he did want something added on, put on the delete list. He has questions remaining about the after-school program increase. So just for the sake of discussion, to get it on there so we can talk about it next week, if you would delete that $200,000 additional revenue from the increase, I think it was a $4 across-the-board increase in the levels of care for the after-school program.
Okay.
All right? If there's no other questions or no other comments? Well, I think both. He had talked about that, but there was some concerns as well, I think, about the ability to, for some families to continue to have economical care. All right?
Chairman,
Yes.
let's make it clear for the public listening, there will be a 9 o'clock meeting next week, regular meeting. There will be a work session on the 31st at 9 o'clock.
That's correct. And
Still-
the budget review, final budget, scheduled budget review meeting will be following the council meeting on the 24th.
Right. But there'll be an additional work session on the 31st at 9.
The work session, I think on the 31st, is simply the regularly scheduled fifth Tuesday work session
That's
for
right.
council. Yes, but
Okay.
it may or may not, we typically call the meeting to order for a work session, don't we? So we would be able to conduct business and make amendments to the budget, if
All right.
necessary.
Okay.
That's right. We'll know that when we leave the 24th. It will probably not be necessary, but it could be. Thank you, sir. All right, no further questions. We are adjourned.